Hello, everyone. This is the seventh week of our Kendo talks. We again are wanting to do these for the foreseeable future due to the great situation that's happening at the moment. This week's speaker is Des Whitson. He is the dojo leader at Edinburgh City Kendo Club, and he is fifth dan and one of the UK's national coaches. He will be talking about his perspective on training. I really hope everyone's been having a lovely day, lovely evening, and that you actually interact in the chat. Please ask questions whenever you want, and we'll get to them when we get to them or at the end of the talk.
Hi guys, how's everybody doing? Just a quick question, as there's a couple of people that are watching this that just text me. But is this on the normal place that it's shown?
It's on Twitch at the moment, currently.
It's on Twitch.
Yeah.
I don't know, I just text that.
Yeah, twitch.tv/USTA Kendo.
Well, you're not expecting me to take that out, are you?
I'm kidding, don't worry.
So, okay, as I said, I've been doing Kendo at Edinburgh. And I think I must have spent the first year and a half to 2 years stamping wrong. And I always tried to use a leg muscle to smash my foot into the floor as hard as I could, which it did make a good noise, but the noise was my heel hitting the floor. And after a while, I started to get other problems with my leg muscles and then foot pain and other aspects of life. And that was because my heel was so damaged from doing the Fumikomi wrong. So one of the things I always teach beginners, when we're beginners starting in the club, is it doesn't matter about the noise you make when your foot connects with the floor, as long as your body and your foot are in the correct positions when your foot contacts the floor. Because I have to wear and I always point out when I'm at training that I always have to wear a heel pad now. I maybe can wear it for maybe 20, 25, 30 minutes, and then it becomes too painful. I have to stop and put it on, and the next day it's really painful. So yeah, that's one of the main things in footwork that people can do wrong, is definitely doing Fumikomi wrong, and that can give you a long-term kendo injury that's not the bestest. But even footwork, I think, is a very, very important key point in kendo. I think a lot of clubs that I've trained at, they don't really do too much or not as much footwork as I do at Edinburgh or have done at Edinburgh. I think 15, 20 minutes in every practice should always be done on footwork, because it's so affects you in other areas if your footwork isn't up to the level of your kendo. And one of my pet hates, and it's one thing I used to do all the time, is when we always get into the hall a little bit early in Edinburgh, People always come in and do some saburi and footwork and things like that. And a big thing, because we used to get quite a lot of university students, is everybody used to do main cuts back and forth across the hall to practice fumikomiyashi. And a lot of the time, you see a lot of people that will practice this and they'll do the fumikomiyashi stamp and they stop. And I always say it's the middle. The fumikomiyashi part is the middle of the cut. To stop like that is done incorrectly. You have to be a much higher level to stop your fumikomiyashi in the cut like that effectively. At your guys' level, you should do fumikomiyashi and then take at least 3 or 4 steps after it. So it's all in the motion, because a very key part of doing your cut correctly and using a successful fumikomiyashi technique is using, when you stamp, using your hips and your stomach to pull with your right leg your hips forward, so it brings your left leg up, and that gives you momentum to go forwards. And this is a big thing that a lot of people don't do. They just use their left stamp and they stop. Because most Japanese students, when they come over, they don't use both legs. They just use their left leg because they can be lazy, because they're not as advanced as they are in most footwork exercises. Because they've done so much. Right, where was I going to go from there? Doing when you're practicing stuff like this, advice. That's what I'll go to next. Advice. People get advice from senseis and their senpai all the time, and sometimes it's really hard to understand this advice. I use this example, which comes from my past in Kendo, because I think it's a really good example. I was at a session in Edinburgh where there was visiting sensei, and we did the session and we were in Jigeko after. So I was with one of the sensei that I was really desperate to fight at the time. And maybe 2/3 the way through our kendo, I must have been fifth kyu at this point. 2/3 through the keko, he stopped the keko and said, "Your kendo is stifling your ki." And then he walked back to Chudan, and then we continued to fight. I had no idea what that meant, so I continued doing what I was doing, and then Yame was called and we moved round. And one of my senpai was fighting next to me and obviously heard the advice. So when I started to have kick with my senpai, he stopped us about halfway through, said, "Remember what sensei said to you?" And I said, "Hi." And we finished the keko, and obviously I was still doing what I was doing, and moved round. The thing is, it was easy advice to understand. Your ki is stifling your kendo, but I didn't know how. So I had to go away and think about it, and lost. And then it's kind of one of those advices that you forget, and I wasn't really pulled up for it. And maybe about 2 years later, I actually understood it through training and using ki, not completely correctly, but a little bit more correct. So, if you ever get advice like that, and it's something that doesn't, or you just go back and talk to some of your peers, or maybe to me, it's kind of frustrating, because lots of people get advice or they get told things at seminars, and it doesn't really benefit them until uh, a lot of time later. They start to understand what that was. I think Kendo's a lot like that, some of the stuff, because I was always standing at seminars going, "What? I don't get it. Don't get it." And my sensei used to tell me lots of things, and I wouldn't understand it till maybe a year, 18 months, 2 years later, going down Kendo Road. So yeah, if you ever get advice like that, always try and keep a. I know a lot of people do this if they're at seminars. They keep notes and keep stuff like that. But yeah, write stuff like that down, because eventually you might understand it and you can go back and look. And it's painfully obvious at the time. But going back to the Keko thing, what I was doing is I was just ki-eyeing all the time. I was just going, yeah, 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 man, yeah, yeah. So the sense is that you key stay on your Kendo, like it was, you're keying too much. You're keying all the time. You're not making no noise at any point. You're just screaming the whole Keko. At that point, I was always the one stood out at the side of the hall, almost being sick, and I never understood why I was doing that at Keko. Why can't I do a whole Keko session? I'm always so absolutely knackered, and I'm always practically being sick every session. But that's what it was. I was just screaming for a 2 hours straight. Um, Simple if you get it, but at the time I just didn't get it at all. So yeah, advice is always try and write it down and revisit advice. Or if you get a book that you have all your advices in, just reread them every so often. You never know. You might just get that enlightenment. That the penny might drop. Okay, enough advices. Another one that always interests me is attitudes towards Keko. And it's I don't know how much we'll be able to talk on it, but it's quite a big thing to me. And I think it's a big thing to a club in general. Um, I'm quite lucky at Edinburgh. We've got quite a big membership at Edinburgh, so we get a decent turnout at every practice, even if we have 10, 15 people on one night, and then the next night there's a different 10, 15 people. So we're quite lucky at Edinburgh. But maybe me, I would love to have 20, 30 people for both practices. So Kendo, your attitude to Kendo and how you do Keko is very important. You know, it's very easy, and I work for a living in the construction industry, and it's very easy if you're doing something outside and it's raining and you get really wet and you're sore and you're aching by the time you get home to say, that was a tough day, I'm wet, I'm cold, I'm not going to Kendo, I'm going to sit and watch the television. Uh, and I mean, I get there'll be downsides to university life and office life or whatever your profession is. There'll be something in your profession that makes you feel the same. And these are the nights that you really should steel your mind and say, no, I've got to go to Keko. It's important. This is a night I can't be bothered. I've got to go to Keko. So you just got to get yourself ready, get out the door, travel, and turn up at Keko. And 9 times out of 10, I feel the nights I've felt like that and wanted to not go and I've dragged myself to Keko are generally the nights that are really good. You really enjoy yourself and you might get that Wazor technique that it doesn't ever happen, or you might score a point with somebody at beach all the time, or whatever. You might just realise something and key on in your kendo that you've been looking for. Sometimes when you're super hyped to go to kendo, you go and it's just not that good a session. So as well for the club, as I was saying, we get good numbers at Edinburgh most of the time. But if you're in a smaller club and there's maybe 6 to 8 of you, and maybe 3 or 4 of you feel the same and say, I'm not going to go to kendo tonight, and then there's 2 or 3 people turn up at kendo. It's not the best for the 2 or 3 people that turn up for kendo. And the other half of the club sitting in the house watching the television. It's a calling kendo. People do kendo because they love kendo. And even people that I know that did kendo that don't do kendo anymore, they still keep a little hand in. They watch the videos. They're still members of all the pages and stuff. But if you're going to practice kendo, you really have to not force yourself, but just keep vigilant and keep going to practice. I know life's not always easy, and it doesn't always present the best opportunities and stuff to go to kendo. But you really do have to make the time. When life gets hard like that, kendo is normally the first thing to go, and it really should be. It really should be the last when you're looking for stuff to try and ease the load of life. You should go to kendo just to have that freedom after keko that you always get from your mind. Because when I very first started kendo, I was really, really busy at the time, and I had gaps of like 2, 3 months at a time where I wouldn't do kendo at all because I was working so much. And then when I come back to the dojo after maybe an absence of about 9 weeks, my sensei would always say, "Oh, thought you chucked it." I say, "Yeah, no sensei, I've just been so busy, I couldn't make it." And then I think maybe after I passed Shodan, it kind of dawned on me because when I passed EQ, um, I really wanted to get a Dan grade. So I trained like crazy and went for Shodan 6 months after I passed EQ. And then I think after that 6 months, I realised I have to go to Kendo a minimum of twice a week, every week, and I can't miss it. And the days where I have these big days where I'm really busy, where I've got to work late at night, I've got to put my stuff in the van with me and just go to Keko after work, and then go home after that. So I kind of stuck to that all the time, and I always tried to do a minimum of 2 kekos a week. Then I tried to do 100 kekos a year, and then I eventually started doing 3 and 4 kekos a week consistently. And my kendo got a lot better, a lot faster through that consistency. And I've been quite lucky to be successful at grading all the time. Not, I'll come back to grading in a little bit, but it was through this coming to Kendo all the time and making sure I was always there, because I think there's a sort of cycle that clubs go in. It's really busy for a stretch of time, and then there's always a downturn. And to me, it goes with the seasons. When it starts getting dark, it starts getting wet. People can be bothered at Kendo. We just sit and have a nice warm night in rather than going to walking up. But I don't know what like everybody's dojo like, but from the car park to Edinburgh, it's quite a walk. And if it's raining and windy, it's rotten. So people just tend to stay in the house. So yeah, you've got to keep your consistency up, and your continuation has to be as much as you can make it all the time. Because I know some university students, they do all the uni kekos, and they do all the city kekos, and they get so good so fast, and people say, "Oh, how's that person getting so good? Like they're in the dojo all the time." So yeah, you've got to do it. This like sort of what I'll start talking about is grading. I think you have a much easier time grading if you can set your kendo to set kekos a week. I'm going to do 3 kekos this week all the time, because as I say, when I up to EQ, I was quite intermittent with my training. I was there, I was not there. I was maybe there once a week, maybe not there for 2 weeks. And then once I got EQ, I decided I want to get my Shodan pretty quickly, as I said earlier. So when I really upped my Keko, then I would do 2 nights at Edinburgh, and at the time, I was maybe training because I stay over in Fife. Edinburgh's on one side of the water, Fife's on the other side of the water. I was maybe training in Fife with maybe 1 or 2 people just for an extra session. I started doing that a lot, so I was maybe getting my 3 sessions a week, and some weeks maybe 2 sessions, some weeks maybe 4. So I kind of worked out an average of three sessions. And I think through this continued large amount of kekos is what got me through Shodan. Again, when I got back from Shodan, I had my eyes set on passing second Dan a year in advance. So I was quite focused on it, quite focused on the grading. And again, practice as much as I could, as regularly as I could. But obviously, when you have to pass grade kind of gradings, you can't. I have this debate with a good friend of mine, this kind of, and he says, "Oh, you should just turn up to Keko 2, 3 times a week for whatever is the allotted amount of years before your grading. Then just turn up to your grading. You should be able to pass that grading." where I always say, I've not really done that. I've always set my sights on the grading, and I've asked as much questions and researched it as much as possible to find out what you should be doing for that grading, be it second or third and fourth and whatever, all the time. So you try and imprint on your mind what you should look like to pass that grade. And I see this a lot in Edinburgh. Once you get the picture in your mind, it should filter down to your body. So if you have the picture in your mind, what you Kendo should look like for that grade, eventually your mind will make your body fill that picture out. But it takes time. It takes time and it takes consistency to get your body to fill that picture out in your mind. So it's very important to have a good picture in your mind about the level of kendo that you want to achieve for the downgrading that you want to get. And it works the kind of same if you really interested in championships, competitions and stuff, Taikai, because I've done quite a lot of Taikais in my kendo career. For a while, that's all I was doing. I would be away every weekend in whatever Taikai we could get into at the time. Again, I was working on maybe 2 waza, maybe 3 waza all the time to take into those Taikais. And I was kind of train yourself to be a one-trick pony. But I think as much as that's not the best thing to do in kendo, I think the training regiment that I was doing, just continually going to kendo, trying the same thing over and over, in the long run, it really helped my kendo out because I was at Kekko so much, and certain aspects of the things that I was trying to achieve to win Taikai were so helpful and beneficial later on for gradings. There's other stuff that you always do in Taikai that are not so good. You train really hard to get out of doing, like ducking and things like that. And the whippy, I always refer to them as whippy cuts. So people around about second and third dan, you can always see the whippy cuts because there's not much sort of intention or I hate to use the word semi, but there's nothing before the cut. It's just a fast hit. Yeah, these kind of things you train really hard to get, and then you have to train twice as hard to lose to move on. But Taikai is a great motivator to get you to kendo. I think anybody at whatever age, it's a good motivator to get you there. Is the competitive feeling of Taikais. I've done Taikais in a few different countries, and it's always good fun. I'll not go too much into Taikais and stuff. I'll do that another time. We'll stick to the kind of training ethos. I was going to do a whole bit on bad habits, but I've forgotten half of what I was going to say now. Most of the bad habits that I always pick up on centre around the first 25 to 30 minutes of lessons that I take. And they're always the super basics like the Suburi, footwork, and kirikaishi, things like that. What's my most sort of bugbear in kendo is one I used to do personally all the time. And I think that's why it bugs me as much, because I spent so much time and wasted so much energy in doing it. As soon as I see somebody doing it, I'm on them like a shot. Stop doing that. It's such a waste of time. It's such a waste of energy. If you can train this out of your kendo now, you'll save yourself so much work later on. And it is once you cut men, lifting your hands head. It's quite a big one. But when I used to do it, I was worse, because not only did I lift my hands above my head, I used to flick my left foot up So I bend my leg at the knee, and it was proper bad because I used to go to taikais and referees and shimpans, sorry, used to come across to me all the time and say, you know, that was a great menka, but then you threw your hands above your head, your foot flicked up, you've no zanchin, so we can't score it. And they used to tell me that constantly. So around about the time that happened, I must have been second dan. Um, maybe 8 months into second dan, we were going to taikais all the time, and you were just trying to get that fast point and develop this. And it took me a very, very long time to stop doing that because it leads on to a bigger problem. Because when you're stamping, your shoulders are in front of your hips, and the only thing you can do is flick your left foot to try and get any momentum because the cut's completely incorrect. It took me such a long time to try and do Fumikomiyashi with my hips, uh, kind of in the middle of the stamp with my knee above the ankle. Where that's the correct place for Fumikomiyashi. Your knee should be above the ankle. So yeah, that's probably my biggest annoyance in for bad habits. Not because I get annoyed that people do it wrong, as I get annoyed because I wasted so much time and effort to correct it. Other bad habits that I get annoyed at in Keko is again another bad habit I used to have when two people do kote and they come round this way for the kote. They don't try and open up any they don't try and put any pressure or create any opportunity to cut kote because I think that I spent a lot of time trying to correct. And if I am not always on the ball at Keko, even now at fifth dan, I can catch myself doing that. It's usually generally with somebody of a lower grade. So if there's nobody higher grade or my grade in the room, I might, and they don't catch me, because it probably most of the time will be if on, I get away with it. But I know, so it's not so good. Not so good. But righty, what else can I talk about? I'm kind of winging it for my first go at this. How are we doing anyway for time? Is that about half an hour? That's not so bad.
Hour. Like I can say one of my worst habits is horse kicking. I'm sure you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah, that,
yeah,
lucky foot. Yeah,
yeah.
that's all.
It's the worst thing.
Yeah,
Oh, we have one question if you want to answer that.
yeah, of course.
Uh, somebody really like taikais, but they still find it tough because they get nervous. How so? Nerves during shiai. How can we fight them?
That is a good one. I was always racked with nerves. We used to go to taikais. I'm not going to name names, but there was a load of us that used to go to taikais all the time. And a person that was on my team for countless taikais all the time used to get really nervous, and you would know when that person was nervous because there was an odd smell all the time. And that's how that person dealt with the nerves. But I always found it really quite stressful with the nerves going to the Thai guys. I think even when you go out and you had a couple of good results, you had a couple of good fights, and you got a couple of good F bombs, I would still find going into the next one was just as hard. And I did quite a big stint at GB squad with the squad guys. I trained with them for a couple of years, and we used to do fights on Sunday, and I would still feel the nerves going into those. And I think maybe after doing Thai Kais continually all the time, after 2 years, the nerves settled down. But I don't think there's any way around it. You've just got to suck it up and do it. I mean, if you're only doing a Thai Kai a year or two Thai Kais a year, I think it's worse because you're not in and around that environment all the time. And I think this was one of the reasons why I'm not that successful at Tai Kais. Um, I've been trying to deal with being nervous before the Tai Kai rather than thinking, how am I going to win this? How am I going to win this? I'm going to use this as a first, I'm going to use this as a second. If he does this, I'm going to do that. So you kind of have to plan. Now I realised this, and it was Tai Kai's that learned me this plan. Try and have some sort of stuff, but don't stick to it so badly that you're like a robot and you become obvious for your opponent so you don't transmit what you're going to do, but have sort of some scenarios in your mind that you've planned out a little bit. Like I'll maybe try this was or that technique, or I'll maybe try main and I'll do it this way, and I'm going to try and do my zanchin this way. So if it doesn't work and I don't score it, or he does something crazy, I've still got like I could try this the Nuki Kote or Nuki Do or something like that. You know, maybe if he doesn't go through, if he stops and turns around, I'm going to try and get a second main cut. So try and all the time run these scenarios through your mind all the time and think about your body. This is a big one that I catch lots of people doing. They'll stand and watch the two fights before them or the fight before them, and they're not moving. You know, always keep your feet fast. You know, feet fast, walk about. I mean, if it's a five-man team and you're on fourth or fifth, you could be sitting out for like 15, 20 minutes. And so if you've warmed up, 15, 20 minutes is enough to cool you down. And if the other person's kept themselves moving, they kept their feet going and their legs going, stretch and stuff, they've got quite a big advantage when you go back in. So you've got to try and distract yourself from the fact that you're fighting with all these sort of smaller things. And this trick of planning stuff out, I learned in Tai Kais eventually around about, I think, third dan, when I started doing gradings, I actually went into gradings with this plan. When I went into the grading, I thought, right, I've got a plan. And I was chatting to it with Jerry Kincaid Sensei, and he said, "Oh yeah," and he gave me the strategy for grading that I was kind of talking about, but I didn't really realise what I was kind of saying until he just came straight out and said it. And his advice, and I've stuck to this for third dan, fourth dan, and fifth dan. Win Shodachi Main, right? Your opponent's next move will 100% be main. Because if you've won main, they want to win main to pass their grading to get main. So what else is going to be your best chance or opportunity for Kote? So as soon as if you get that Shodachi main, like you've programmed them, they know they're going for main next because that's what they want to do to pass. It's your best chance. And if you do some sort of pressure and just get them on the end of your shinai, make a small movement, they're going to go for main, even if they're at the wrong distance, and it's your perfect time for Kote. You get your first Shodachi main and you get set to follow up for Kote. There's not much you can do wrong for the rest of the Keko. So you're always going back. Because I always try, my worst technique is Kaishido. I never do it. And I always try and set these things up when I go into gradings to try and hide that fact. You know, I have to try and do another waza. It makes you, I mean, you can't know when the judges are writing on the sheet or watching you. So sometimes you get the waza and they're not watching. So it's difficult. You have to try and set up so you get a good Kote, a good men, two good hits, and try and do some sort of waza. So I always try and hide from Kaido, and I think in fifth dan and fourth dan, I don't even remember doing it, but I got a Kaishi. Was it maybe not fourth dan actually, but fifth dan I got a Kaishido. Don't know where it came from. I couldn't even remember doing it when I was in the Keko. But you always try and plan. I think that's the best way. Take your mind off the fact that you're nervous about it. Especially, it's always bad. And we used to do this all the time, as we used to look at sheets to see who you've got. You know, oh wow, I've got that guy or that girl. She's in a GB. She's in a GB squad. I'm probably going to beat them, and that's you. sitting there for the next however long time it takes you from reading the sheet to going on, thinking, how can I not lose? But you should blank yourself out from the sheet and say, right, it doesn't matter what person I get in this tie guy, I need a plan to win it. And it's got to work for anybody. So start planning. I think if you occupy a move like that, it takes it a little bit away. But it didn't work for me anyway. That's how eventually I did it. But it wasn't through any intentional sort of thing. Just because I did so much tie ties and things like that, it kind of just developed. And that's what I did it to do with it. But yeah, as well, tie ties, I think when I fight single in tie ties, I'm never as focused as when I fight in teams. I've always said I'm a better team player than I am individually. And I think if you have a team around you and it's a good team and it's your friends and stuff, it's a little bit easier to focus and keep your mind on what you're doing, and you don't feel the nerves as much, unless it's 1-1 and you're choking, then it's not after that. Right, where was I going to go to next? What can I talk about now?
So what would you say a good thing for practicing for Shiai is to actually take Jigeko that you do at the end of a session and treat that like a Shiai?
This is difficult to do, difficult, because what generally happens in kettles is you stop and talk, or you do something and it doesn't please you, you stop the cut. So you have to, it's difficult to do that for yourself, because you kind of have to know what the other person's doing, and anything you do, you have to take to completion. It's the same when you're the same for grading and Keiko. And people have said to me, I'll go for fourth dan, and it's all show dancing with you tonight. And I say, oh, right, okay. And this one really bugs me, and I don't catch too many people doing it. It's two people going for men, and with hands off. So you should have one hand, and then it'll make like a windmill circle. And I catch these people that go for higher grades doing that with a show dan. And I say, I thought you were practicing for your grading, but I'm all thinking show dan. I said, well, would you do that in your grading? Why did you do that with the show dan? And you tell me you do that in grading? So you're not taking it seriously. The men cut you did wasn't what you do in the grading. So why are you doing it against something that show dan? If you go for a big grade or an EQ or something like that, I mean, you have to practice all the time, and you're practicing against yourself. That sounds some proper advice, doesn't it? But I mean, you're actually trying to make yourself do a perfect keko. And when you're practicing for a taikai, you have to go into the keko and you have to think to yourself, my game plan is this person that I'm fighting is not going to touch my men, my do, my kote, or my skidari. I am going to dominate this, and they are not getting anything. And you have to have that attitude for the 10 minutes that keko is. If it's a big club and you have half an hour, kekos might be longer, or maybe a sensei's got some visitor, so it could be 15 minutes, or it could be 2 minutes, but you have to focus your mind and keep your mind on point all the time. Too many people get distracted, go in like that, and then they get distracted, or because I know people in my club that are going to stuff, and when I'm fighting them, I'll smile or I'll talk to them to break their concentration, and they'll smile back. I say, oh, come on, get on it. Ignore what I'm doing. The whole discipline thing is you're supposed to be on it here because you're practicing for a grading, for a taikai, whatever. It should be perfect all the time. Perfect for 3 minutes. And that's a really, really hard thing to do, especially if you do the best main cut you can and your opponent decides to block and step right in your way. So then that could happen to you in your keko, or in the fight that you're fighting. So you have to deal with it. You have to alter your expansion or alter your way out or what you're going to do next in an instant. So yeah, it is possible to prepare in Keko. It took me a long time to realise that. You know, when we used to go to squad, we used to be told to fill out a diary about what you're doing and stuff. And I think relatively around about the end, I stopped going to squad. I actually stopped and read my diary, and it was just me complaining. Ankle sore, elbow sore, hips sore, feet sore. You know, it was just a load of stuff, complaints. And I thought, I'm getting slightly too old for this. But then a while later, after thinking on it, it didn't have all these things in it. It didn't have, I should be looking to beat this person. And you've got the added thing in squad that you know what, you get to know people's kendo. This person does this lassie does that, that guy does that. Why am I not taking advantage when I know their kendo? Um, so yeah, it was a missed opportunity, and it's hard to try and keep yourself focused on what's relevant to help you in your training. But yeah, it's tough if you can make yourself do like a grading shinza or a competition fight in a keko and not have your mind wander or break concentration. It's difficult because that used to happen to me at squad all the time. I'd fight for 3 or 4 minutes and they'd push you a little bit longer to see what you had. And eventually, at some point, I would switch off, and that's when I would lose. And the coach at the time said, "You're breaking your concentration. You didn't lose because you didn't have the kendo. You lost because your concentration wandered. You left an opening, and the other person took advantage of that." So yeah, I think you've really got to try and train your mind as well as your body to take full advantage. And I think once you get there, I think there's a knack to that. I think once you get it, it's a good ethos to have to train. I think you can get good results because as I say, I was the worst student ever. My sensei said to me, you've tried everything. You come in here every week and try something new. You've tried every style or whatever you can think of till you've got one that kind of works effectively, which is great. Till 6 months later, I try and find out something else, and I just ditch whatever was working. So yeah, it is difficult, but you've constantly got to adapt and change your kendo and keep your mind open. Some people do the same thing day in day out, and you wonder why they don't progress or win anything. You've got to kind of. I used to do a lot of video footage as well. Um, we'll come back to that in a second, but you've really got to push yourself mentally to try and keep yourself sharp. And I think that's a really, really difficult thing to do. I think that's, you know, you got all the big kendo theories and stuff, and I think improving your personality and your humanity and all that thing. I think that's doing those kind of things with your mind is along those lines. So video footage that I mentioned there is, I think, one of the best tools that there has ever been for me for learning kendo for myself in kendo. I've got a folder like this thick, and it's just full of discs of my early stuff from maybe EQ to maybe second dan. From me and whoever I could get at the time would just rent a squash court and do kendo for 45 minutes, and I would always record that. And it's always good to watch those things back all the time. And I used to do quite a lot of it in Edinburgh, where I used to record sessions and post them up for the group. And as well, Michelle Lynn, she used to, everybody will know Michelle from Glasgow. When she was at Edinburgh, she used to record every single session, and she used the video footage to improve her kendo. And I think it really is a good thing. And I think the best tip is when you watch footage and you find something you like that you're doing, don't watch that again. Find the bits that you don't like and watch that over and over and find out exactly what it is you're doing wrong that you don't like and try and not do that. Because I think as well that if you can watch the good bits and watch the bad bits and you want to try and phase out the picture of the bad bits in your mind and phase in the good bits, again, it filters down from your mind to your body, and eventually your body will start doing what you want it to do. But yeah, repetition is definitely a big one. But YouTube's another one, especially when I went for fifth dan. I spent an enormous amount of time watching fifth dan gradings on YouTube, and a lot of the American gradings will maybe have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 people all going for the same grade. And a lot of them like to post who's passed and who's failed in the comments. So what I used to do is I used to watch the whole 90 minutes of it, and I used to have a failed and passed column, and I would write the numbers down that I thought failed, and I would write the numbers down that I thought passed, and then I would compare them to what was actually said on the video. I think I got a really good picture of what fifth dan should have been or should be in my mind before I went for my grading because of doing this. But it took an enormous amount of time to go through that all the time, and I watched lots and lots of videos. I think I watched quite a lot of fifth Japanese gradings. And that's difficult because their kendo's a lot more fluent and energetic than ours, so it gets lost in translation a little bit. So I've kind of tried to stick to more European gradings and American gradings and Australian gradings um, to try that. But yeah, getting a good picture in your mind's a good thing. And there's lots of stuff on YouTube where you can watch sensei teach things, and if they're in a foreign country, they will teach normally what they teach kids and beginners in Japan, because we don't have a good grasp on that kind of thing. So yeah, and it's always good to learn fundamentals and basics. Is definitely the way to go. I do a lot. I mean, as you've trained at Edinburgh, it's always around about those things that I go for at training. Lots of keyhole and kirikaishi, things like that. Stuff that is repetition. It repeats all the time. And going to that, what I'll talk about next is kirikaishi. I know when I first started Kendo, and maybe up till about second dan, I hated it because we did lots and lots of kirikaishi, maybe 35, 40 minutes of it. And back when I was sort of second dan, Edinburgh was massive. There was 25, 30 people every session. It was huge. There was lots of people. When you passed one of the old Edinburgh traditions, if you passed a grading, you had to fight everybody in the club, so you got a bit of beating. And you were always counting how many people were in the club when you came the night after you passed them. We used to do loads and loads of kirikaishi. And as I say before, because I used to key eye wrong and put way too much effort into things where I shouldn't have, I was always burnt out during kirikaishi. But maybe when I got to third dan, fourth dan, I started to appreciate how key kirikaishi is to putting better basics into your kendo. Kirikaishi really does cover everything. Covers distance, covers your cutting. It really is a good thing to do a lot of it, and it's part of the grading requirements right up to third dan. So yeah, you should do as much kirikaishi as possible, and you try and do as much of it with as little effort as possible. That is what I never used to do. I used to be 1,000% effort in kirikaishi, where I should have been trying to do 50% effort in kirikaishi and doing it the best I could. But you want to go fast, you want to be good. But nowadays I can do kirikaishi with about 40% of the effort that I used to do it with. It looked better and it would be just the same probably, if not a little bit quicker. But in kirikaishi, there are things that a lot of people do, and doing these mistakes will stop you getting anything from kirikaishi. We do lots of different kinds of kirikaishi at Edinburgh, and one of the ones we do quite a lot of just now is on the show men's. We don't body check, we tie a tie or anything like that. your motodachi will run backwards, so you can do like a proper main cut, and then with no broken momentum, you'll start your sai main cuts. But there's lots and lots of different. Kirikaishi is such a vast exercise with so many variants. Um, it really is good. But the best piece of information, or the best piece of advice I ever got for Kirikaishi, and it made my Kirikaishi look twice as good as it did. Not instantly, but maybe 2 or 3 sessions after, when I practiced the advice I was given. Because a lot of people, when they hit Kirikaishi, their first men in Kirikaishi, they do the famous hand lift. And this advice was one of the things that I did to train that out. So when you strike your first men in Kirikaishi, you try and roll your shinai down the shape of the center guard and the men. So if you strike men at the correct distance and you just roll your shinai down, by the time you get to Tayatari position with that person, you're naturally in the correct Tayatari position, and because you've rolled your shinai down the center of the body, and your hands are kind of this way, your shinai is just here. It's not in the center, and it's not sticking away over here like some people's it is in Tayatari. It's just here, and that's the correct position to have your shinai. So you should be looking through two shinais at your opponent like this. There should be no shinais. It should be kind of like this. And that took a long time to train that into my kendo. And because I was doing that, what happened was my hips started to be underneath my shoulders and in between my feet. So my fumikomi started to get better, and I was able to do a faster main cut. Quite a big difference in the speed that my main cut used to happen. That my main cut sped up a great deal through this. Only after practicing for a long time, but it was such a simple, easy piece of advice that I understood straight away. It took a little time to put into practice, but it was absolutely fantastic. It made a massive difference to my kendo, and I think it's one of the biggest influences that's moved my kendo on, as much as just that simple understanding of what your hands should be doing in kirikashi was explained to me easily through this advice. Because sometimes senseis can tell you things or teach things, and you don't really get it, or it doesn't really, the penny doesn't drop, and it doesn't really do anything for you. And you could be at another seminar or another dojo, and a different sensei could be teaching the same basic thing, but word it in their way, or show you in their way, and just that the penny can drop, and you can immediately think, all right, why is my sensei, or why was the seminar I was at, why wasn't it explained like that? It's just two different senses have explained it two different ways, and one of them's been the way that you understood. And then eventually, once you put that advice into work, you could actually understand that your sensei was saying the same thing. It was just presented differently. So it's always important to travel a lot and practice and speak to as many different people as possible. You know, righty. What else will I talk about? Oh, I should have done this so much earlier. Okay, go on, Is.
Do you have a couple questions that have been building up? If you want to answer some of them as well.
Yeah,
So Baz is asking,
sure.
what's your most satisfying moment in a taikai?
Most
Most
satisfying
satisfying
moment in
moment in
Taikai? Probably
Probably.
I've probably
Probably
got
got
two,
two,
but
but
I'll
I'll
only
only
go into
go
one
into
of them
one of them
because the other
because the
one
other
makes
one
me
makes me
sound
sound
big-headed.
big-headed. I was at the London Cup one year, and Walter McCann was there. He's on the New Zealand team, and he's really good. His kendo's really nice. Got lots of time for Walter. His kendo's fantastic, and I got him in the singles. And I thought, oh well, that's me out. But then I thought to myself, right, I can beat Walter. I could do this. So I was sitting before it, and I was getting nervous, and I started planning. And I thought, right, I'm going to do, because at the time I was working on my Debana Kote. So what I was doing at the time was I was sliding my right foot in and pushing my kensing up, and I would do a short 2-inch move to look like I was going to try and do a men attack, and then when they moved, I would bring my shinai over and hit kote. And the first attack I did with Walter, I did that, and I got the kote. And I was like, I've spent all that time trying to perfect that waza, and I managed to do it. So I was so pleased with myself. I went back to the line, took Chudan Nokamai, and Walter hammered me. Many. So you've, again, as I said earlier, you've got to keep your mind on the ball. You can't let your mind wander. But that was a really good satisfying moment. Not because I got the point on Walter, because I made waza that I'd been practicing a lot work on somebody I thought was a really high level. Even Walter's a really high level Shiai player who's really good. So yeah, I was pretty happy with myself. For that, it was good. But I think Shiai, I wasn't the best Shiai player in the world. I think what I did do was I was quite consistent. So yeah, that was satisfying to see all that training pay off in that sort of atmosphere. There's much more things that one of my favourite losses was I was fighting in the final of the Oslo Open, and the 2 points I lost, the first point was a Yakido, and the second point was ski. So yeah, that was quite. It was a nice fight, and it was a good fight, and there were good points that I've scored against me. When I came off afterwards, having lost the final to those two cuts, so that was quite a good fight. So that was quite satisfying in an odd way, even though I lost that fight. But yeah, I'm not going to name the guy that done that. He's nameless. But yeah, I think it's difficult. I think most people are always frustrated by Taikais. I don't think there's, even if you win them, and I've been in winning teams and stuff, you come away more worried about the stuff that you missed or didn't work. So yeah, I think it's odd to get a satisfying moment in a Shiai. What was the other question?
Oh, we have quite a few. So somebody was asking, what are the best ways to actually practice for Jigeko and for Shiai at the moment? Since we can't really hit each other.
It's a difficult one. I don't know. I think maybe when you do Shiai, it's all about the pressure of your mind. Most people lose Shiai when their mind snaps and they lose concentration. Sometimes it's just because the other person gets the better cut or the times are better or whatever. But yeah, I think the strength of your mind is a lot more with Shiai. Some people are naturally born Shiai fighters, very competitive, and they just can't see themselves losing. But not everybody has that in them. I don't think I ever had that in me. I was never put up or down if I would never come off furious at a loss. I think if you try and prepare your mind, I think if it's only Suburi you do, and push yourself, push your limit with the amount of Suburi you can do, and make your mind to control your body. Don't want to control your mind. I'm going to do 1,000 Suburi one shot.
And 150 in, which is usually for me 150 in. There's no way I'm doing 1,000. There's no way I'm doing 1,000. There's no way I'm doing 1,000. So you got to start your 1,000 and say, I'm doing 1,000. I'm doing 1,000. I'm doing 1,000. I'm doing 1,000, all the way to 1,000. And don't let your mind switch off to the fact of what you're trying to achieve. Keep your mind on the goal. Because most of the time, when your mind comes off the goal, that's when you're not going to achieve it. So definitely, if you want to try and practice anything for Shiai just now is try and focus your mind on gaining what you want to do in Shiai. And it's always good. Most people travel. It's always good to put yourself in scenarios in Shiai. And the more Shiai you can do, the more scenarios you actually have that you've actually had experience. Because everybody's got that scenario where they did something stupid. I think one of the Thistle Cups in Aberdeen, I stepped in too quick and somebody took Cote from me. And I went back to the line and done exactly the same thing. And they took a second Cote. And I came off. Why did I do that twice? I've seen other people as well step out 4 times and to lose 2 Hansoku. So you got to try and focus your mind on what you're doing. Another thing you can do is tape out a box on the ground and stand in Chudan no Kamae. 1 step forward, 1 step back, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 1 step left, 1 step right, 1 step right, in all the directions. And always try and have yourself standing in the middle of the box, because it might not sound a good exercise, but if you've ever stepped out 4 times, especially in a final, I know somebody that's done that in the final, stepped out 4 times for 2 Hansoku. You always got to know where you are, because you see some of the high level Japanese Shiai players and they'll fight in the corner. I never ever did that. I always kept an eye on the X, and I always made sure I worked myself back to the X before I would start to fight again. So it's another small exercise. Just make sure you know where you are. There's not really too much you can do. Just sort of try and train your mind and train your body to know where you are and achieve the goal you want. What's the next question?
There's somebody who I'm pretty sure is in my club, but I can't remember because it's a different name, saying, can concentration be practiced from the very beginning? And I'm going to look at them in the eyes next time I see them and say, have you been listening to me whilst I've been talking to you literally ever? Because I'm sure
concentration's hard. And I think sometimes when you go to people's
Kendo dojo, there's so much in Kendo and there's so much aspects in Kendo, and then you get a lot of the looking at the far mountain stuff. People use all these things, and you find yourself daydreaming when you're in Keko, and you're that busy trying to fathom out what all that meant. And some of the high grades you meet don't know really what that means, and you've missed something important, and it's hard to concentrate. And as well, there's lots of Japanese terminology in Kendo, and it's really hard to remember. I think one of the ones it's down to experience. I can remember my sensei screaming at me, "Do you not know what was the one he used? Mawari Gecko." Was it? He always used to say Mawari Gecko. Start. That's just us fighting. So we start fighting, and then I think there was guests, and he said, "Free practice, not Mawari Gecko." I'm standing going, "What? I thought Mawari Gecko was a gecko," but I didn't know Mawari Gecko just meant circulating practice. So you had your fight, you finished, and you moved, you step 1 step to the left, and you fought the next person. Where he said Jigeko, and it was just fight anybody you want, basically. So I always remember what Mawara Gecko was because of that. But if you don't really pick these things up, I think I was in the club for 3 years, 4 years by the time I passed enough grades to get to the top, and I walked in one night and my sensei said, "You're senpai Bewa-san." And I went, "I don't know what to say." And, "What do you mean you don't know what to say? You're Sandan. How long have you been doing Kendo? You don't know what to say." I went, "I know what somebody else says, I know what to do when they say it, but I don't know what I don't know." And I think that night there was high level guests, and when I bowed in maybe 45, 50 people, I got it wrong. So what to do? So you always find these things out the hard way. But it's difficult to concentrate in Kendo because there's so much to see, there's so much to hear, you're learning so much, and it's maybe why dojo leaders are always repeating themselves. I mean, we always repeat ourselves as well because people realise things at different times, and you could say something over and over and over, and then 18 months after saying it over and over, your student can come up to you and say, I get that now. You know, I've done it myself countless times. So, yeah, it's difficult to try and keep your concentration. And I mean, it depends how strict your dojo leader is. I mean, I know you're quite strict yourself, Liz. Um, but you know, you're standing here, you're trying to soak in what the person's saying about Fumikomi or grip or whatever, and then your sensei will walk past you and say, "Yeah, your gi's not tied right," and that's you fiddling about with the strings on your gi for the next 15 minutes. And you do it, and then you say, "Right, okay, that's enough explanation. Let's do that." And you're like, "What?" So it's difficult, you know. You have to try and retie your gi or your hackle, whatever you're doing, or retie your hemo, but still pay attention. So yeah, it's difficult. I definitely was guilty of not paying attention as much as I should have. But it gets easier. The more you do, it gets easier. I wouldn't want it too much about it.
Also, I will just say I have seen multiple times the same scenario happening with the bowing in. Maybe not to 50 people, but like in smaller dojos, and it is something that even as a beginner you should kind of start to like actually understand what they're saying, so that if you ever do get put in that position, you don't have to go, yes, I've been doing it for 4 years, but I don't know what they've been saying at the start and the end of every session. I'm so sorry. Because I can tell you it is one of the most stressful experiences ever.
Yeah, definitely. Especially after you do it wrong, your senses like that.
Yeah.
And he's doing this. Okay. Yeah, I mean, lots of people bow in different ways. You know, it just depends what dojo you're in. You know, not everybody uses the same phrases or the same terminology, but you should know your own.
Yeah.
You don't. Please look out your way. Most clubs will have it written down in their club manual someplace. But yeah, what to do? Any more?
You've answered most of the other questions, and also one thing for any terminology: always ask your senpais. Really, don't be afraid to ask questions to your senpais. That's what they're kind of there for, isn't it?
Okay, here's a story.
Oh.
I remember I was going for fourth Dan. This is for the senpai out there. This is not for people asking the questions. This is for when you have to answer one. I was going for fourth Dan, and as always, I trained as hard as I could with my ball root shirai on.
And I was happy. And as normal, about 3 weeks before the grading, I thought, you know, I better do some kata. So I asked somebody in the club to do kata, and we did kata. And I asked my sensei at the time, what does my kata look like? And he went, okay. And he said to him, before I bow in, which way round does the kodachi go? Is it on top of my bokto or underneath my bokto? And he went, look that up for next time, because he couldn't remember. So I've always had that in the back burner. If you ever get asked something you don't know, tell the student to go look it up and come back to you and see what they find out. That's such a lazy answer. You know, at the time I went, oh no, he's testing me to go.
But I went home and I looked it up. Came back in and I went, alright, I've looked up sensei. This supposed to be this way. Good, you'll never forget that. Of course, we got down to the grade and I thought, what way round was it again? But what to do? But yeah, if you ever get asked, just tell them to look it up and see what they come up with themselves.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
One of the last points I was going to talk about, and this
has been really beneficial to me. I mean, I've got lots of Kendo peers and lots of people in Kendo that are around about my grade that I've always had as a resource to go to for advice and asking things. But one of the best things I've ever had was somebody in my dojo that was around about my level, and we trained together lots, you know, and we have sessions where we do one-on-one sessions, just me and my mate Drew. I don't know if anybody knows Drew, but we practice a lot, and I think the benefits from having somebody you can train with like that on all of your sessions. We do lots of one-on-one sessions. We're in the club together all the time. It's such a good resource to have, because when you have Jigeko with that person, it's really hard to score anything on them because they know your kendo so well. I have a lot of really good kendo friends that are really good that live really far away. So you might not see them for 6 to 8 weeks. And in 6 to 8 weeks at sort of that level, it's easy to kind of perfect another technique or change your timing or something and be completely different in your next keko. But having somebody appear in the club with you is such a good resource for me. I mean, it really has been really good. I mean, I still say some of the sessions that me and Drew did together, because we're doing maybe 2 or 3 a week and we record them, and we'd be overly critical towards each other, is I think the reason why we both managed to pass fourth Dan and I managed to pass fifth Dan. We really did. We'd watch a lot of stuff on YouTube, we'd record ourselves and watch over and over, and then we'd have the chat, and then we'd try to put the changes that we made into our practice. I mean, it's just the two of us, and we're like, if it's just, say we're trying to do perfect something in our main cuts and we're doing maybe five minuti each, you do 1 minuti, you don't do it, you would say, no, you're still doing this, you're still doing that. So you could shout at each other, not doing this, not doing that. And that really was a really good thing to have. I mean, I know that's not always the case. Because sometimes there might be a third, fourth, or fifth Dan running the club, and the nearest grade to that might be IQ or Shodan, and you're not going to really get the same benefits from such a big grade jump. We came up together in Edinburgh. I don't think he was maybe started 18 months before I did. So we've always been there, and we've always kind of been around about the same level. And we both live in Fife, so that's been such a good thing for me in Kendo. And if you can cultivate that, definitely don't let that chance go by you. It really is worth it.
I don't know what else to talk about. How long is that? That's over now.
Oh, that's been an hour and 15 minutes. You've been doing great.
Well,
It's like you have so much knowledge. It's great. It's just yeah. We have one last question that we can wrap up on if you want.
Shoot.
So someone was asking, what kind of mentality do you like to see in your students? Or is there kind of a philosophy that you ascribe to in Kendo that you like to see in other people?
I always have a good time when I'm doing keko, but I'm always serious. I always enjoy my kekos, but I'm always serious. So I think because that's a trait that I like to see that in others. I don't like to see people getting frustrated, because I think earlier in my kendo career, I used to get frustrated quite a lot because I wanted to be good. So yeah, try and have a good time at kendo, enjoy kendo, but be serious. And when I say enjoy kendo, enjoy the experience of kendo, but not enjoy like a funny thing. It's nice to have a small joke or a small smile or laugh with your keko partner if something funny happens. But always try and remain serious but upbeat, and always be. It's nice to be polite in keko. Reiho's a really big thing in keko, and it's nice to see some of the students take the time to say onegaishimasu or domo arigato at the end. There's so many people just bouncing, so it's nice to see that. But yeah, there's different people in kendo all the time. There's some people that do really well with the thinking part of kendo. There's some people that do really well at the physical part of kendo. The natural ones, the ones I dislike completely, that come in, that can do 20 minutes, hate the guys. But yeah, it's just nice to see somebody enjoy kendo and have a good time doing it, but still do it seriously. So it's not a joke. what to dislike in kind of people. I don't know. I can't really say I'm not really that much of a negative person, so I always try to turn positives into negatives into a positive for things like that, you know. So, but yeah, it's nice to enjoy Keckle with a person, no matter what grade they are. And if I have somebody that's downgrades down below me, I'll always try and throw them a small smile and stuff, just to try and get them out of their shell a little bit. But yeah, it's nice to see people help other people at Kendo, because I mean everybody needs help at Kendo. And some people are bossy at Kendo, you know. Some people are shouty. But yeah, it's nice to have a good time, but yeah, train seriously, definitely.
Don't take yourself too seriously. Train seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously.
Okay, that's a really lovely place to wrap up. There's no more questions rolling in, so that is the end of week 7 of our Kendo Talks. Please, again, get in contact if you would like to do one of these Kendo Talks. We want as many people's perspective as is possible, because since we can't really travel to other dojos, what we can do is we can use the internet to make the dojos travel everywhere. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a lovely weekend. Stay safe. Goodbye.